Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling a topic that I know can be a bit of a head scratcher, especially if you're just starting out with Italian reflexive verbs.
Yeah, these verbs often trip people up.
They really do, but they're everywhere in Italian. So let's unravel them a bit, shall we?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so for anyone who's maybe new to this, can you give us a quick rundown of what makes a reflexive verb, well, reflexive?
Sure. So basically, with a reflexive verb, the action is reflected back on the subject. It's like instead of saying, I wash the car, you're saying, I wash myself. The action is kind of like boomeranging back to the person doing it.
Okay, so it's about that direct connection between the verb and the person doing it. I get it.
Yeah.
But then there's the whole conjugation thing, right? Because that's where it gets kind of complicated, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. Conjugating reflexive verbs is like a two-part process. First, you conjugate the verb like you normally would, matching it to the subject. But, and here's the kicker, you also got to use these little reflexive pronouns in the mix.
Those me TC guys we see hanging around verbs, right?
Exactly. And they have to match up with who's doing the action. So if it's I, you'd use me, like in mi lavo, I wash myself.
And for you, it'd be T,
I
right?
got it. And it goes on from there. Si for he, she, it, she for we, and so on.
Okay, I'm starting to see the pattern here. But why go through all this trouble? What's the big deal about reflexive verbs in Italian? Like, are they just a grammar rule we have to memorize, or is there more to it?
Oh, there's definitely more to it. Reflexive verbs aren't just some random grammar quirk. They're actually super common in everyday Italian. You use them for tons of stuff, talking about your daily routine, describing how you feel, even expressing emotions.
Oh, I bet. Like, I can't imagine trying to say, I feel happy in Italian without using a reflexive verb.
Exactly. Or think about simple things like getting dressed or waking up.
Yeah.
You need those reflexive verbs to say those things naturally in Italian.
That makes a lot of sense. So mastering these verbs is kind of like getting a key to unlock a whole other level of fluency in Italian.
Absolutely. The more comfortable you are with reflexive verbs, the more you'll sound like a native speaker. Plus, it'll help you understand spoken Italian better too, because you'll start to recognize those reflexive constructions more easily.
This has been super helpful. I feel like we've demystified those tricky reflexive verbs a bit today. Any final thoughts or tips for our listeners who are on their Italian language journey?
Well, I'd say don't be afraid to experiment. The more you practice using reflexive verbs, the more natural they'll become. And, pay attention to how Italians use them in real life, in movies, TV shows, music, you name it. That's where you'll really start to pick up on the nuances and the little quirks of how they're used.
Great advice. Thanks so much for joining us today, and thanks to all of you for listening in.
Yep.
Until next time.